Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's episode of eSpeaks, we're talking about networking trends. There's really a lot going on in the world of networking these days. To discuss that, I'm joined by an industry expert. With me is David Hughes, Chief Product and Technology Officer at Aruba. David, very good to have you with us today.
Hey, James, it's great to be here with you.
Alrighty, so let's look at the networking market. I mean, there is a lot going on. I think even before that, it interests me, in that not everyone talks about networking as much as they talk about, say, cloud. Cloud gets a whole lot of headlines. Artificial intelligence is really buzzy, machine learning. Networking is actually really, really crucial to everything, but it seems like it doesn't get quite as many headlines and buzz. Is that your sense of things, or is that just from where I sit?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where, what sort of metrics you're looking at, but what I think is really important is networking underpins everything. You can't get to the
Right.
cloud without traveling over the network. We couldn't be having this interview today without the network. And
Hmm.
what's really, really interesting is the way networking is being infused with all this technology from other areas. So most of networking today is cloud managed. So the cloud component's really important.
Hmm.
In our devices and in our algorithms that run in the cloud, we make extensive use of machine learning and AI. And so many of those areas that you mentioned are actually kind of feeder technologies into networking. And
Hmm.
one thing we might, might talk a bit about it later, but I think there's also a shift from people thinking about devices or a thing like a network and be more focused on the outcome. So can we have this conversation today without any drops or any echo or any pixelation? That's the outcome people are after. And how you deliver it, it's the network, but it's kind of acting there behind the scenes.
Interesting. So really, the network is everything in its own way. I mean, it may be somewhat unsung, but it's really there, regardless of the amount of buzz it gets. I'd love to get your sense, looking at the networking market. I mean, what are a couple of key trends that are really driving things here in 2022, as you see it?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of different things I could pick, but let's just start with two. So one is the rise of what we call the micro branch or the branch of one.
Hmm.
Obviously, with the pandemic, people needed to work from home. And we've been looking at all different ways of addressing that. And a lot of people use the software VPN client. But for certain classes of user, where they're using multiple devices, like a call center employee or someone that wants to be always on, um, our microbranch offering is a really good way of addressing it. So the idea is you take an access point, a wireless access point, the
Hmm.
same kind of access point that's used in an enterprise at work, and bring that home with you. It connects dynamically via multiple paths into your corporate network and basically extends the corporate network into your home. So you can have the same consistent access and security policies, really high quality and redundant paths so that you're not dependent on a single internet link. And so this is a kind of a new area where we're seeing innovation, and we're expecting to see a big uptake this year as people realize, what, this work from home thing, it's not temporary. It's going to be a big part of many corporations, many people's everyday life. What can we do to make that experience better?
So my home office really is, in a sense, a micro branch, or could be.
Yes, yeah, yes, exactly. And I think that as we go forwards, people are going to be thinking more and more about how do they equip their employees with a better experience when they're working from home.
Interesting. All right. So what is the second trend you mentioned?
The second trend would be around what broadly is called network as a service.
Mhm.
And this ties into what I was alluding to before, where consumers, on the consumer side, people are gradually moving away from the idea of buying and owning devices or things and paying more for experiences and outcomes. And as they make that shift, they don't worry so much about what's inside something as what it does. And a great consumer example would be like Alexa. No one cares how much RAM Alexa has or how many gigahertz the CPU in there is operating at. What they care about is how well does she recognize what they're asking for.
Mhm.
And the same thing's happening in networking. The shift is towards what does my network deliver on what my employees need, on what my customers need. When customers walk into my store, are they able to get easy access to the guest Wi-Fi? Are the point of sale systems always connected? does a stock scanner as I'm walking around work consistently everywhere? Those are the ways that they measure the network. And so this with network as a service is really a shift from thinking about a network as a whole lot of devices that need to be managed to delivering a service with a certain kind of SLA or SLO, service level objective.
Mhm.
And the trend that we're seeing is a big shift towards thinking about things that way, whether it's about how they are consumed, whether it's consumed kind of at a monthly billing or upfront. The focus is more on the service versus the device.
Hmm. Does that mean that more people, more companies are logging on to networks and using a pre-built network, or not necessarily?
There's a whole spectrum of things that fall into this kind of NaaS category. So in some cases, we have large customers where we're providing them network as a service for a monthly rate per store.
Hmm.
And it's the same rate, just basically big store or medium store. And whether it takes 20 access points or 30 access points to get the coverage and meet those objectives, that's on our side. We'll figure that out. But everything's wrapped up in that one monthly bill. And so that's kind of one example. Other examples are, people want to be able to pay monthly for smaller increments of either wireless capacity or switching capacity or WAN connectivity. And so we are enabling that as well.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, let's look at some common pain points that the companies have with their network setup. I mean, obviously I think companies really grapple with this. I mean, what's a typical pain point, and what advice would you give to companies to address that pain point?
Yeah, so one of the big challenges that's kind of, again, been accelerated by the pandemic and this idea of work from anywhere is how to secure your network. The
Hmm.
traditional perimeter has been dissolved. So if you think about security and networking, they both go closely together. But
Hmm.
the old model was you have a castle and the firewall is like the boundary, the wall around the castle, then the moat around the castle, and the idea that what's inside is good and what outside is bad. Obviously, with work from anywhere, there is really no clear inside and outside anymore. So when you're working from home, in the next room, your teenager may be playing games or maybe downloading malware. They're on the same network as you. And
Hmm.
so the role of the firewall and being the kind of center of gravity of security is diminishing. And what's on the rise is the idea of cloud delivered security, because most of what you're doing involves going out to the cloud or through the cloud. And so rather than trying to put a wall around every place you might be, what if
Hmm.
you put a wall around the apps that you're trying to access up in the cloud and put that in the cloud? And so this move towards cloud delivered security is, a big one. And Gartner has a name for it, SASE, Secure Access Service Edge.
Hmm.
And it's really all about having, on-prem security that lets you do what a traditional firewall does, provide segmentation, so if someone hacks a video camera, they can't jump and start attacking the point of sale system. That's the kind of on-prem piece, coupled with cloud delivered security services like secure web gateway and so on. And so this is a big trend, a big problem, but one where the industry has been innovating at a frenetic pace over the last couple of years to give network and security practitioners ways to address this.
So it is zero trust is really at the center of that. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah. So that very true. So zero trust is a little bit of a buzzword, but the most important idea there is that rather than having an internet where anything and anyone can connect to anybody, which is kind of like where the internet started, what we're moving towards is a zero trust infrastructure where each user or each device can only connect with destinations that are necessary for them to get the job done. And you're authenticating and validating both when the user connects, but also continuously to make sure that those roles that you have for devices and people are adhered to.
Interesting. I know that the Secure Access Service Edge is pronounced as SASE, which I think is fascinating because people will at some point want a software as a service SASE solution, which is really a SASE SaaS solution. If that makes any, there's going to be a marketing problem at some point. I'm not sure.
Yeah, generally the cloud component of SASE is as a service.
Uh-huh.
And so even today, that's generally sold as a service. And I think we're going to see more and more sold that way because as we talked about, people are looking for the outcome, and it's easier to pay for the outcome than pay for the device.
Hmm. Interesting. So, I mean, you're obviously very close to the networking market. I'd love to get your sense of what's the future, say a year or so, maybe a couple of years out, 2 to 4 years out, even the future of networking. What are some milestones we can expect in the years ahead?
Yeah, so one interesting milestone that ties a little bit into what we've been talking about is if you look at the ratio of people connected to the network to devices connected to the network. And in 2021, that ratio was 5 to 1. So there's 5 devices for every person. And I think this is continuing to increase. And I think by in a year or two, we'll be at that kind of 10 to 1 level where we have 10 devices for every person. What does it mean? Well, I think SASE, for instance, is
Right.
really about people connecting to their apps. And that's a very important problem. We as people always think about ourselves first. And so it's natural that when we think about security, we think about networking, we kind of focus on the people and the apps. But we've got to remember that's really the tip of the iceberg. For every person, there's 10 devices connected. And
Mhm.
what's really important when you think about a networking and security strategy is to keep those devices in mind. And as we kind of move down this road of digital transformation, more and more sensors, more and more devices, scanners, digital displays are being connected to our networks. And not only do they need to be connected reliably, they also need to be connected securely.
Hmm.
And making sure that you have a network which can segment to make sure that one device cannot be hacked and end up compromising the other devices
Mhm.
becomes really important. And so I think that kind of 10 to 1 ratio of devices to people, that's a milestone we've got coming. And it's a lot of what's driving this shift and need to move to implementing zero trust principles.
That is an amazing ratio, the 10 to 1 ratio. I'm not sure even I want that one to come, but I believe you that it's on the way. I want to give you a chance to talk about Aruba itself. And how is Aruba addressing the networking needs of its clients? What is the Aruba advantage?
Yeah, so Aruba, just very briefly, we
Mhm.
offer a very broad portfolio. So we've been a 16 times leader in the Magic Quadrant for wired and wireless access. So a
Mhm.
very broad range of access points, switches. We have WAN connectivity with the Silver Peak acquisition. So we are able to help customers with their data all the way from the edge through the wired access point, wireless access point, through switching to the WAN, across the WAN, into the cloud, and into the data center.
Hmm.
And what we're doing at Aruba is pulling all of that together in what we call our Edge Services platform. It's a cloud native management system, Aruba Central, which manages all of this unified infrastructure. It delivers a protection layer around that secure connectivity, because today it's not enough to be connected. You need to be securely connected.
Hmm.
And then finally, back to the real beginning where you mentioned about AI, the third layer in ESP is around orchestration and AI operations. So in everything we do, we're always collecting data about the operation of the network, and we can use that to optimize the network and help deliver those outcomes we're talking about more effectively.
Hmm. David, it's fascinating. I think it's going to be an interesting sector to follow. I very much appreciate you sharing your expertise today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James. It was great talking to you today.